Okay, and is that everything? All right, fantastic. Welcome everyone to the 2021 New Orleans Poetry Festival. I'm Jonathan Pinton from the NOPF board. Before we get started, we need to thank this year's major sponsors. We want to thank this year's major sponsors, particularly the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation and the Academy of American Poets, who have helped us keep this year's fest free and open to all. It's good to see you with you, and be sure to go to nolapoetry.com to check out the many other events we're running this month and the archives of the many events we've run so far. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kirsty Maxwell.
Hello, thank you so much for being here, for using your time this way tonight. It's great. This is my favorite poetry festival. I'm sad that we weren't able to be in New Orleans together again this year, but I look forward to hopefully being able to do that next year. And it is so nice to at least be able to see so many more faces because of the virtual aspect of this year's conference, so our festival. So thank you all for being here. Tonight we're gonna just be celebrating some new-ish books from Saturnalia Books with a kind of a suite of Saturnalia Books authors. All of our books were very new last year when we were meant to be reading, but obviously the conference or festival was canceled due to COVID. So I'm glad this year that the festival was so nice to honor all of those acceptances and to have us read this year instead. So we're just going to read in alphabetical order, going by our first names, because it just seemed easiest to organize in that way. And we'll all just enter our bios and links to our books in the chat. So you please look there for that. And there is a special being run tonight by the press for Timothy. Can you say what exactly that special is? Oh, yes.
Yes, I can. So if you get all 4 of our books tonight, it's just $50. And then also we give you a free Saturnalia t-shirt. And so I'm going to put the link in. When you hit the PayPal button in the comments, just put the size of t-shirt that you want.
Wonderful. All right, thank you. So without further ado, I'm going to give it to Alexis Ivy, our first reader. I'm going to pin you here.
Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here tonight. I wanted to thank New Orleans Poetry Festival for hosting us and Kirsty Maxwell for the invitation to read. So tonight I'm going to be reading from my book, Taking the Homeless Census, that was published by Saturnalia Books in 2020. The first part of my book is a crown of sonnets about my work with the homeless. I'm gonna begin in the middle of the crown, and the title of the crown is The A Street Shelter. I had to take it when I was a child, Pam said, and I nod a yes. I am like her, show up for her, promise I'll be there for all the homeless I can, stow blankets, hand out donated quilts, give people sleeping out in the rain ponchos, feed them protein bars, ham and cheese melts I made before my shift. Nuts I chose for vegan Joe. He likes to be known. And I see her, Pam, drunk, can't leave the ground where she sprawls, because today she's sick of life. I tell her the world I know with a walk-in center for women. My job sweaters me. I'm careful. Refuse to bleed, used to bleed. I'm careful, refuse to bleed, used to bleed. I first see Sharon at the end of her intake drunk. She isn't wearing her teeth like she was last week when we were hugging hello at an NA meeting, share with the group the truth about ourselves. She knows my deep darks, can't have her living here. This is the one place no one can tell on me. This was my safe place for me not to have my history. Maybe she'll leave, maybe she'll want to clean up, maybe she'll go to a program, get sober, have teeth again. Maybe I'll give her my business. I've got your number, she says, Alexis. I've got your number, she says, Alexis. I wasn't there when she took off. It was the morning shift and she must be in bliss in her new one bedroom. All the walls were pine. She would put up her heirloom curtains. Her kitchen drawers she's filled with silverware stolen from the lunchroom. She died, doped up, so high her needle still in her vein. Kept wishing she were here. I would have Narcaned her not breathing. She was found on her so new mattress, wrapped in her curtains, hadn't gotten bedding yet. Housing, she finally had it, a headstone, in the God sense of things, a place of her own. In a God sense of things, a place of his own. A man asleep on the bedrock construction site. It's 10 below. He must sting, his moan mildewed with booze. He wants nothing from me. I didn't want to leave him, but I did. I wish he'd wanted a place to go. Outside is where I work, and out here people die. One kid shot, stole pills off the wrong guy, chicken choked, heart fails, drunk falls downstairs. Tonight I saved no one. I wish I had given him mittens, hand warmers, gloves to wear. I wanted to make the run, would have driven him to shelter so he'd be warmed, yes, would have cleaned the back seat of his sickness. Would have cleaned the back seat of his sickness, just so I could know the eye of one-eyed Sid. His eye, torn shut like that, tearless, how it got to be that way, and why it took so long for his left lid to wake, crusted shut each morning, his caged eye. He asks for socks. I ask him snowflake or unpatterned. Warm, he says. A necktie I get him. His court date is the 9th. No thanks, he says to a face-saving button-down shirt from the clothing closet. Won't take a razor to shave. Flirts, subtle grin, puts his hand on mine. You have moonstones, the 2 nicest eyes I have ever known. The 2 nicest eyes I have ever known sit on a bench with Kit. I give them water. It's beer 3 so far, chaperone, 2 Eyes tells. Do they pretend that they ration their beers to please my worry? Kit's moved on from liquor to Listerine. Her coat is covered in dried bird shit. I've seen her beg, seen her cop drugs, seen her talk unslurred, neatly dressed, looking housed. The cops called us with a code 110, homeless drunk. Not a crime, not an anything. They had just ran out of beer. I can recognize those fleeing detox cries, see their out of money eyes, look to me. Their out of money eyes look to me in the train station. I offer to walk Jane to the shelter. I'm living at Lori's house. It looks like she's been here, parked on the floor, hasn't come to the shelter since her boyfriend died there, OD'd, couldn't get to his heart, medics cut off his shirt. I was there, another night I took work home with me. I can tell she's high, a pile of Kit Kat wrappers shine beside her, her skull, the hat she won't remove. I've been high, outside, waiting for him. I know that story. Past their home, I came to poetry. This next poem's called You Don't Know a Man. My father says, until you've seen his place. His first live alone, a triple-decker, dishes piled up in the sink. Before is the place my father goes to often, only listens to music recorded before 1977. He's dust jackets, vinyl vintage albums, when I wasn't even in the picture, or the liner notes, or the artist statement. My mother future tenses everything. She's full of desire, the want of what will. Say we're on vacation on the Cape. She wants next year on the Cape. asks for the dessert menu in the middle of the main course. She worries what'll happen to me, worries while watching Channel 7, waiting for the news of tomorrow's weather. I smoke a cigarette on purpose right before I walk into their house, so I'll be practically unhuggable. And there's that photograph of us on the Cape, mother, father, brother, their sunglasses facing into the lens, and me, alone like an orchid. I suffer the unspoken. When coyotes all get together, they yip. I want to be a part of that howling, be licked clean. This next poem's in the form of a sestina, a 17th century Italian form. A recurring dream I had. I was left at the bottom of the hill. It was kindergarten, and so we had taken a field trip. Kindergarten, there's no number to that grade. I was left by Miss Anderson. Her long blonde hair forgot me. She always wanted the best for me. Alone is what's best for me. As always, again, the next night, everyone else got up the hill. Again, I'm left at the bottom of the hill. I never yelled up, never spoke up the next day about being alone all night, though night never happened. The next trip to the bottom of the hill, I didn't ask why they left me. No one noticed I'd been left. In the dream, I kept being left. Day after day, the dream of it happening again, my parents never looking for me. One Tuesday night in the 3rd grade, I waited down the hill for them to come and get me. They couldn't even make the trip, thought they would want me home. I got used to feeling alone, like in real life, that tiny hospital bed at Children's, me alone and 2 weeks old, every night for a month, left without a goodnight song, tubes hanging from me, no trip home, no being held or looked at by my mother's face. My father again mourned me like I'm dead and buried at the bottom of the hill. A part of me must have died there in my parents' minds. The part of me I still don't know. The me who is forgotten, ignored, looked over, alone. The me who couldn't make it. The me who couldn't climb a hill, couldn't be like Jill of Jack and Jill. I know Jill would have never left Jack in that nursery rhyme. I'd sing it again, try to whistle it to fetch a pail of water. What a trip and fall Jack took. Maybe he would trip down my hill someday, be near me. But he never did, so it's me again, only me, feeling so truly alone, that by the 200th time I dreamt it, I felt meant to be left. And I stayed with that feeling at the bottom of the hill. I never flew in that dream, tripped a lot, rocks, dirt, left the hill dream after me dreaming the hill for years, years waking alone, years again thinking, doesn't everyone's life come tumbling after? The pinup girl I want to be is a poster hanging in my closet, is all oops, my top is falling off, holding a rose, pink, practically with her fingertips, petals babying her nose. Even I can smell that arousal as she embraces her right breast. Chin up, she's revving for a downtown night. Her other hand plays with the telephone cord, tempting with moves unmoved. Is she answering that call or hanging up? I can choose any misconception I want. She's on her back, one knee bent and the other crossed over, high heel dangling. She's pinned here, all satin in a classy broad way, poised in forever, forever. Radical surgery. Let me show you the scar waist deep down my chest. deep enough to deserve a get well card. I was just being born to be cut open and stitched the way a sparrow knots his beak in sandwich crust. My body turning blue like it was winter at the beginning of July. Still I dress for weather in any Sylvia Plath sky. The moon has nothing to be sad about. I rely on that moon, my courage as deep-wooded as a star's. If I point to my heart like my hand's a gun, would you love me? This next poem's in the form of a pantoum. Allegiance in 5 stanzas. I will write the rest of my life how steadfast I am. It's my job. It's all I can do. How steadfast. I am a carriage horse. It's all I can do. My boots clip-clop the pavement. A carriage horse, breaking my heart on the page. My boots clip-clop the pavement. I carry everyone along. I break my heart on the page, writing my bridled life. I carry everyone along, born for this and to this. Writing my bridled life is my job. Born for this and to this, I will write the rest of my life. Map of Boston, 2013. From my fire escape, a blue balloon has strayed from its party, caught on a tree. It's out of breath, tired of the bullying wind. From up here, I can make out the other side of the playground, and a dandelion in the alley grows out of a crack. I didn't grow up well-mannered, no linen napkins on my lap, but on paper plates on Center Street, one of childhood's main drags. I moved out of my folks' house where the one leaf in my salad was iceberg, learned to lose my mother's Boston accent, learned how dirty half-melted snow can get. I could show you certain corners of Mattapan, clotheslines keep high-rises from falling. Fights break out, windows stay broken, hate crimes caked in paint on storefronts. Even I was dangerous once, buying late summer smack, overheating the car on Blue Hill Ave. These days it's murder on Boylston Street. It's pressure cookers tearing the marathon apart, blowing legs loose like bricks in the blizzard of '96. The Commonwealth is constantly in revision. Even I edit myself, take out every never, each always. I used to think explosions near the finish line meant victory. And my last poem is in the form of a villanelle. It's the last poem of my book. It's entitled Elegy. Autumn is the season of slow reside, shredding ivy green turned brown. Leaves absolve the earth before they die. Leaves well kept, blown, layering the sky, stepped on, so settled in sky sound. Autumn is the season of slow reside. Sun shows late for the fallen, shines stubborn, a street lamp in that polis of clouds. Leaves absolve the earth before they die. Leaves stripped and torn as they pine for frost, first snow, blood on the ground. Autumn is the season of slow reside. Leaf smoke catches in the eye, the kind of worldly pain all birches bear. How leaves absolve the earth. After they die, the sky will weather and rain less light. December will also die. How round autumn is, the season of slow reside. Leaves absolve the earth before they die. Thank you very much.
That was amazing, Alexis. Those were so powerful. I especially love that. The penultimate poem you read. So good to hear pieces from that. I'm going to remove your pin now and pin Caleb, if I can find them here. Caleb Kandrilli is our next reader.
Hi, everyone. Hi. All right, I'm going to read you 4 poems. One's short, one's long, 2 medium. So that's how I quantify my poems. On traveling together. In a Super 8 just outside Iowa City, 2 12-year-old boys cuddle on the lobby couch, scrolling on their phones. It's 4 in the morning, and they don't expect me or anyone in this holy space they've drawn for themselves. Their parents are asleep on the 3rd floor, resting before a hockey tournament or some other rough and tumble game. It's clear by the way the boys jump as I walk by. Their parents know nothing. The floor is lava. The continental breakfast will start soon. The couch they're on is an island I've been to. I miss traveling. All right. This is a long one. You've heard this before. The only way out is through. When my family burnt it all, we even burnt the dolls. I write about this all the time, but have you ever seen anything like it? A pit of ashes and dozens of porcelain hands sprouting up like girlish weeds. So far in this life, I have heard a number of unacceptable apologies, and they have all begun with "I'm sorry" and ended with OxyContin. It's a shame the Pennsylvania landscape is just waterfalls, coal, and pharmaceutical drugs. I wish there were more libraries and less violence, but I have always been so painfully hopeful. On Facebook, my siblings' boyfriend messages, "They've been at the airport. I don't know what to do." And I resist the urge to tell him, that's what they do to all of us. Instead, I write back, "Oh no." There are so many ways to be angry at just one thing. I haven't seen my sibling in 9 years, and sometimes I have a temper with my hand fruit. Bite it a little too hard, because chewing is such a frustrated act to begin with. When I was 7, my father said he was going to push me all the way around on the swing set. I leapt off at the peak, airborne and so sure of his strength. Centripetal or centrifugal, neither matter if your face meets the ground, alive with blood and mulch. When I was 11, my father told me the legend of Pope Joan, and I loved how she hid her herness in plain sight, so invisibly woman. She gave birth, was put to death, and I imagine she must have been raped. She must have. I believe that had I known one trans person as a child, I'd have half as many scars as an adult. I could have come around to this body so much sooner and without as many cigarette burns. My whole body a cratered and earthbound moon. Often, when I am drunk and alone, white men ask me what I have against white men if I want to look like one. And then they follow me all the way home. It seems every man in America has been taught to stalk real quiet in a forest of dry leaves, myself included. I am not a man, nor do I desire to be, but I suppose I have always been a hunter, armed and unwilling to consider my own shortcomings. After I woke from my double mastectomy, I thought about the day my father killed 2 doe with 1 bullet, and we butchered them both right there and then. There are 2 of everything worth having 2 of. Now I am so visibly trans. I am being photographed in white light, my scars lit like dogwood crowns. It's hard to know what to make of this when all I have ever known is blood red and a wilderness. Recently, a new cloud was introduced to the atlas, known for its apocalypse lip color, its mouth opening dark deep like a sinkhole, or your trans lover's eager and previously abused mouth. Nobody wants to be lonely, least of all me. Maybe I'm interested in clouds because I am one, stratus slice post-surgery, or maybe it's because I'm an air sign and have been missing my family for years, despite all their lava, all their hot, angry fuel. My mother is a better whistler than me, but I think we both understand air and our mouths and the best ways to call for help. Listen, there is a razor in the apple, and the apple is the earth. Listen, my nightmares are dreams in which everyone walks the same direction, that rhythmic lockstep. Both of my grandmothers considered abortion. Can you imagine being so close to nothing? All right, so now on to the medium poems. My partner always tells me what to write about. And then I do a bait and switch thing. So they'll be like, write me a poem about Sheryl Crow. And then I'll just put Sheryl in the title, but abandon her in the body of the poem. So my partner wants me to write them a poem about Sheryl Crow. But all I want to do is marry them on a beach that refuses to take itself too seriously. So much of our lives have been serious. Over time, I've learned that love is most astonishing when it persists after learning where we come from. When I bring my partner to my childhood home, it is all bullets and needles and trash bags held at arm's length. It is my estranged father's damp bed of cardboard and cigar boxes filled with gauze and tarnished spoons. It is hard to clean a home, but it is harder to clean the memory of it. When I was young, my father would light lavender candles and shoot up. Now, my partner and I light a fire that will burn all traces of the family that lived here. Black plastic smoke curdles up, and loose bullets discharge in the flames. My partner holds my hand as gunfire rings through the birch trees. Though this is almost beautiful, it is not. And while I'm being honest, my partner and I spend most of our time on Earth feeding one another citrus fruits and enough strength to go on. Every morning, I pack them half a grapefruit and some sugar, and they tell me it's just sweet enough. It's not really about Sheryl, but it could have been. So I'm going to read you a brand new poem. So I don't really know if it's good or not. I'm going to read it. The only atlas we need is one drafted by children. I know because a woman told me, even a horse's shoe against stone can spark a fire that wilds too far. All humans have forged and the embers combust eventually. The copper busts of men who believed only in genocide are common as clouds. The barrels of 357s were born red hot before they tucked themselves into angry men's waistbands. Yes, I write about my body because nobody wants me to have one. This is not a lonely life. This is the truth of all people I have kissed under the shade of weeping willows. In Pennsylvania, we are known to gamble our money as much as our lives. Scratch-offs, Powerball, lifting rocks to wrestle both king and coral snakes. Red touching black, safe for Jack. Red touching yellow, kill a fellow. Children in a forest depend on verse, limerick, the iambs of wind throbbing through birch trees. Across the country, my desert family drinks exclusively Pacifico and grafts the wounds of cacti. Two species eager to grow as one. This is all to say, most people understand more about transness than they let on. My small town let me play baseball with the boys, let me dodge the goose shit littering right field, and let me lead off. All transgression of gender permissible if I batted over 300, listened to Three Doors Down, Creed, and supported the war. What comes first, the hatred or the curriculum to teach it? I memorized 4 centuries of papal reign before the periodic table. I knew atomic warfare before the atoms bumping together to build it. I learned I was alive before I learned how I became so. Parents all atomic and chafing. Some things are inevitable, like rain in April, a teenager's newfound lust, and disease dancing through a child's poorly tended ant farm. Somewhere, a child is playing cartographer in the woods, making maps of worm writing. Somewhere, that child marks the roads we should have taken in only tempera paint. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Caleb, that was nourishing. That was powerful too. Great stuff. Thank you all for reading. This is really special for me to hear you all after having just read your books, and how lucky to be pressmates. I'm going to read from my new book, My. I'm going to try to find the little link here that I have. And then we'll move on to our final reader, and we'll have a little time for a Q&A. If anyone has questions, you're welcome to enter them into the chat too. I'll start with the first poem, Sea Songs. On a day in which a sunrise embarrasses you because of the way a cloud is handling the sun, an intimacy you yourself have missed, a light touch, a wisp or whiff of hand. You take a photograph, putting distance between yourself and the scene. A wave breaks some news to the shore. It is nothing new, but still. A shell under a layer of sand, a swollen lymph node. When you were small, you thought everything you saw was what you were going to see every time you looked. There are so many things to miss. A list goes here, but the people around you are going on about bacon and pork rind and the ear of a pig, frozen blubber, the smoke points of various oils. You have commercial excess to thank for the dry swimsuit, your second, that you will soon put on, a permissible exit. Let go of your list like a grudge you punish yourself with, thinking you are punishing another person. The seagrass looks like a great party from here, a crowd with arms, doing what arms do when unconsciously mimicking seagrass, caught up with wind. The tide of each eyelid covers the shore of each eye. There will soon be a man-o-war, showy as a fascinator, but with no head to hitch to, or a great head, a remarkable head, but one cannot imagine, so does not get to see. It is our approach that needs redoing. The test batch of our perception thrown out. The eye and icing on the dry cake of the mind. When you can't sleep, at least there's a sunrise to trail like a celebrity. A tide scrolls up like a news feed, and you still hover over each shell, deciding if you like it enough to note your liking, if you like it enough to take. It might prefer you not like it, might prefer not to leave. A wave debriefs the shore about the larger sea. What has it to say? There's a way to be tenderer, but we've given tenderness away to the language of meat. The next poem developed from a misreading. I'm often finding mishearings or misreadings very generative sites. Poems starting with a misreading of the first line in Anne Carson's The Glass Essay. I can hear little chicks inside my dream. They sound painted. They sound like a feather's most profitable idea. They sound off. The sound is off, like something in the fridge. Several days old beans. In a different world, a newborn bean. Cantaloupe. Whatever it is that's our last stage. Our vegetable matter. The world's last vegetable lamb. This is no Easter candy, not chicken or counterfeit beef. To have a beef with, a fist in the feast. A woolly aphid parades like a cleaning pad over the rough face of a tree. What does the tree care? One must not only ask, but discover a method for asking. Must harvest the fiber to process the text. Embroider the plant onto the sheet along with initials. Our love so natural now, reminded of its seed. That the seed foresees its own flower likely has nothing to do with the eye it's shaped as. But who knows what knows what? I can hear little hiccups inside my brain. I can hear little hiccups inside my drain. The disposal needs to be addressed. Dear disposal, dear waste. Somewhere the carcass of a deer. From the interstate, my love driving can find and count every deer, coyote, fox. He animates the field, brings the forest into focus. There. It's a wonder we say the world, a singular thing, a monocle resting on the galaxy's plump cheek, the other planets mere moles. No, I can hear little hiccups inside my brain. Everyone has their own trick to make them stop, to resurface the esophageal road. There's been a hiccup, like an accident, bone exposed, metal plates stacked in the cupboard of one's body, not to be taken out, no matter the guest. We are asked to think about what we have, to interrogate need, what's negated by terror. Here is one more torn interior to tour, one more acorn of light to misplace in the hillside, that swollen cheek, taunted by each gauzy cloud that does nothing for it. Okay, it does something, tossing out beads of ice, of rain, as if the earth had flashed something, or at least outstretched its arm, made hysterical by desire, like the rest of us, with no rest in us. I can earn little checks inside my dream for my dream job, to knit a rind in which to enclose the wheel of sun and its gooey light, to assign the barnacle to the shipwreck, to oversee the wound as it woos the throb, to edit the house's biography of the last rooted tree, to tempt the glacial sadness to carve. We are our own misinterpreted evidence, our own misstill or mystic, our own bento box into which the lunch of our being is divvied out among the organic compartments. Our limbs either rogue noodles or chopsticks already snapped apart, ready to be used regardless. Or regard more, the zebras dressed up as tall grasses, a meter's ability to discern the worth of coins, the coin fed, the corn fed, and the confession, the Mexican egg filled with confetti despite having never been cracked. Was it that we wanted to be amazed or amaze? Was it that we wanted to identify the husk holding our succulent kernel, a core we can't give up, that punk, shielded by us, shielded from us, a two-way mirror? Where is the power, seeing oneself or seeing another, that the mirror itself limits our conceptions of empathy, suggesting as it does that we can deposit ourselves elsewhere, cash in, cash out, invest. The terms are already decided. Do you agree to the terms? And the dollars too. Among the irreconcilable things, the way pollution amps up the beauty of a sunset, soupy neon, toxic pink, as if the sun were airbrushed onto the sky, waiting to be eclipsed by a couple's ornate names and the symbol for love, which the sun must regret despite the magic of photosynthesis, of any synthesis, is not itself, or that we might regret we've made internal to ourselves. Somewhere a sleeve of cloud rolled up to compensate for the heat. The AC kicks on and kicks the curtain from the pane, letting light find its way in. And light sips from the flimsy lid covering the cup of your eye. It's not light that is liquid here. In an ocean, a turtle is lured with indistinguishable meat we distinguish as meat because it bleeds, has blood that loosens into a red jellyfish, and so, via metaphor, gets a second life as a second animal, a second before it's taken into the turtle's mouth, a guide's trick to ensure one sees what one's hoping to see. Because though one has paid, one has yet to tip. And the dollars too have a metamorphosis to fulfill. I'm chorusing with my cat. My cat just wanted to help read that poem. And this is my last piece that I'm going to read, and it's called Obad. Once stood in one's longest line, for another's brightest juice, from a vegetable's decimated body, made to make mates with one's buds. Once learned from a friend how to work the mini stovetop espresso maker, and wondered what encounters YouTube has destroyed, what one needs no longer ask to be shown. A democratizing click. You too can know. Once slept in a living room with other living things. Once worried over the height of the space at the base of an exterior door. What would come in and would it greet me? Even a grater could be interpreted as greeting the block of cheese, but we know what happens there. But maybe a cheese's shredding is its experience of the sublime, a dismantling, the disorientation that comes, a platform for departure from the station of the self, a friend left behind but turned back toward and acknowledged by something in the face, nearly indetectable, as is a mutation in a gene long hunted, meant to prove something it doesn't, but seen now nonetheless as it is. Thank you. And now we'll have Timothy Liu.
Christy, when you mentioned your cat, my cat heard your cat and came into the room. And I think they want a little date or something. I have to make that happen. Wow, thanks for that reading. Whoa. Okay, so this is my bio. So it's a little bit like the beginning of a Star Wars movie. So I'm gonna try to do it here. Ready? Here we go. Okay, so and I'm showing you that because my husband Chris is on this call, and during the pandemic in the last year, he bought me all these t-shirts made by artists. And it's just a reminder that writers and artists and performers and musicians, man, they have had a rough year. And so any way that we can support these people in our lives, it makes a huge difference. And independent presses need your support too, but you need to be supported by your independent press. So tonight, if you don't want to get all 4 of our books for the special, which you get a free t-shirt, you can get maybe one of these lovelies, maybe Alexis's book. And who knows, Alexis, maybe when the new ones are printed on demand, right, all the little things will be fixed. Or maybe you want Caleb's book. And of course, Christy's book. And the thing that cracks me up about these books is normally at Saturnalia, we prize all the books being the same size, but each of these books is slightly smaller than each other, almost like little Matryoshka dolls. I'm not sure why, but it just shows you how different the poetics are with each of our poets. So here's the funny thing. I went online, I was searching and I found a code. And if you type this code in at IPG, you get a 50% discount tonight. Isn't that insane? I think it's insane. And you're gonna laugh when I type in the code because it is IPG sub. And you know, those of you into the sub dom lingo, I guess IPG, we are sub to the dom of IPG. So anyways, it's just a little extra bonus. Please get a book from one of our authors tonight. It goes a long ways to support the press. And we really appreciate you taking the time to Zoom in tonight. Okay, so that's my spiel. I'm sad we're not in New Orleans. So thank you, New Orleans Poetry Fest. Thank you, Lisa and Jonathan and Bill. Last year at COVID, you guys remember like they canceled AWP at the last minute. Remember the fated San Antonio AWP. And then 2 weeks later, they canceled the New Orleans Poetry Fest, which I was sadder about because let's face it, NOLA is such a better city than San Antonio, like 1,000 times better. And I had to cancel my hotel reservation at the Chateau Hotel in the Quarter, which is where I always stay. So I am still longing for the Chateau Hotel, and I'm hoping that Christy and Caleb and Alexis will join me there sometime, and we'll like do the hot tub there or something. All right. Okay. So here's a little poem that I actually wrote at that hotel that's in Let It Ride. And this is called Love Letter, French Quarter. 2 pigeons on my porch inching closer. Next ringed violet and green in a Mardi Gras iridescence. Dirty squabs, bullying a sparrow away from the crumbs I toss. Post-Katrina sirens drowning out the St. Louis Cathedral bells, whose tones caress not one but 2 plaster touchdown Jesuses anchoring their respective lawns. No tourist dare walk upon, not on a day like today. Who wouldn't want to be manicured like them when the magnolias start throwing down their blooms in a shower of wilted shoehorn splatter? The whole day stained by the heavy scent of honeysuckle wreathing the air with its seasonal jazz. Makeshift hucksters sauntering through alleys looking for a handout I don't have. Only a glance of sweet malaise, my sawdust throat humming a tune that has no name. And then following Caleb's lead, I'm going to read all new poems. So these were all written since the Ides of March. This one's called Bromance. Says he wants to disappear. Call him the cancel queen, he doesn't mind. Ask him if he wants to grab a burger after working out. Catch the latest horror flick, and he'll respond by starting to remove the rusty staples from missing children flyers attached to stiff poles. He picks up after other folks' dogs, likes to keep the woods we run through free of drama. We fuck off trail. Cell phones unable to mark our last known location, with no one for miles around to medevac us out. This poem is a little bit like a fugue. This is called The Gunman. The gunman had been washed. The gunman had been washed in the blood. The gunman had been washed in the blood of the Lamb. The gunman had been washed in the blood of the Lamb at the Crabapple First Baptist Church. The gunman had been washed in the blood of the Lamb at the Crabapple First Baptist Church, according to a Facebook post. The gunman had been washed in the blood of the Lamb at the Crabapple First Baptist Church, according to a Facebook post, now deleted. Do not cross. Out of work and gussied up as Kung Flu Panda, passing out I can't breathe t-shirts inside a COVID ward. BLM marchers on those monitors overhead. Massage parlors cordoned off with black and yellow tape. Self-portrait as strip mall masseuse. Open wide. I've been the sorry flavor of the month. The 15-minute backroom gangbang. I can say it sometimes hurt to be made to play the asshole in someone else's idea of a good time. Call me Jasmine. Call me Pearl River coagulating in your throat. It took me forever to get here, decked out in my silk brocade. Won't you look at me now? Am I not the same woman traded in for the next model? Call me whore of the earth. I'm begging you to finger me one last time. Put a bullet in the back of my skull. I can take it. Hurry. There's a long line of wrapped men just outside the door, clamoring to cop a feel, all dying to get off. The honeymoon. You trip up the gangplank moments before the ship sails, almost sure your husband's still on board. You wonder if you are headed for something bigger than a moon turning on the high seas. You left your passport and any sense of virtue in the back seat of a cab, too much in a rush to tip the driver. Something you'll pay for later, your affair, a maxed out credit card with an interest rate so low, you don't even bother to scrape the mud off your flippers. Your husband looks good. He looks good in a Speedo, especially when he belly flops off the high board. Everyone gathering around the smorgasbord, drawn to unseen viral loads, making their rounds. No one yet knowing will be trapped on the poop deck for days, weeks, until someone pulls the plugs on wheezing ventilators. Who knows how many lifeboats will be launched by then, and we return to shore stripped of all our baggage, not even a shot glass or a silver spoon to mark all those places we didn't get to fuck over. Hunger. We eat lower on the food chain. Shrimp, scallops, the future of this planet on our minds as we are that much in love. He loves his daughter, wants food left in the ocean long after we are gone. Everyone seems to be looking for an exit strategy. A poet once told me feeling a tiger sink its jaws into her throat was the way she wanted to go. A woman hooked up to a machine, the metastatic cancer twisting her spinal bones beyond recognition. Her secret lover too far away to shut her eyes when the last moments came, just as he had predicted. His wife having called her a 5-cent whore when answering machines instead of voicemails were de rigueur, as the French are fond of saying. Her married lover called me 6 weeks later when news of her death had made the rounds. He who never got to see her stripped hospital bed. She was too weak for her last meal, died without leaving a notarized will. Intestate is what the probate lawyers said. Smell of blood in the air as everyone circled. Is it a crime to order a fillet of halibut or shark? In times like these, wherever the mythic imagination is to blame, we want our love modest, bite-sized, as little girls slurp down oysters at the roadside bar, unaware how their futures depend on us. And this is the last one. Thank you all for being here tonight. And the four of us would love to field and entertain all of your burning questions. So feel free to put those in the chat. The room. They took our phones, our clothes, asked us to stay calm. Someone will be with you shortly. Some had felt more comfortable in their own skin. The heat in the room was stifling, sweat dripping off noses, salty rivulets trickling down our faces and chests and pooling in our groins. Where to start? Each held a single poem that took a lifetime to commit to memory. Each starved for an audience. If this was our chance, why not take it? Behind us, the door through which we'd entered had disappeared, and we knew no one else was coming.
That was so fantastic. Thank you everyone again for sharing all of your words, for writing those poems. The first question is for you, Timothy. You are great, yes or no? Yes or yes, sorry. There actually isn't a no option.
I don't think that's a question. I think that's Kevin Henderson being funny.
Does anyone have anything, comments or questions? Either are fine.
If you'd rather talk, you could also just raise your hand in this Zoom hand raising thing and I can unmute you.
There is a question from Sarah Wetzel here. Given the isolation of this past year, do any of us feel that our ability to say things in poems has changed? Do you think your audience has changed?
I don't think that my audience has changed per se, like the demographics of my audience. I feel like perhaps it's widened a little bit, just by the nature of us being inside. I think it's a lot easier to stumble onto a new poet when you're not like traipsing through the woods, not in a bookstore. I don't know. There's just like I felt very busy during quarantine, but also like I had time to learn about new things. So I think there are more people reading poetry. So I don't think the poems for me have changed so much. I just think there's more of us reading it.
Alexis, Timothy, any thoughts from you?
I totally agree with Caleb. I feel like poetry has been so much more accessible that it's just totally widened the audience. Also, being alone so much, it's funny, I ended up applying to a bunch of residencies because I was like, oh, I can be alone now. Like it's easier than I thought. And I actually got one. I'm going to be in a cabin in the woods for 3 weeks this summer in South Carolina, and I probably would have never applied to it before quarantine.
I love that.
I,
Timothy,
I think we're closer to death, you know, especially if we don't want the 500 plus thousand to be abstract, you know, in any way. So I think that brings us closer to all the serious things, you know. So it could be film, it could be an opera, it could be a poem, it could be a book, but it also could be a spiritual practice. And I feel like in my own life in the last year, there's been less of poetry. You know, I normally live in New York City. I'm up here in Woodstock, you know, locked down. And normally I'm wandering the Strand bookstore 2 or 3 times a week. You know, I'm going to readings and I'm browsing and foraging. And I'm not doing that. And so I'm still reading, but not as much. And so I don't know. I found rather than a widening or an expansion of an audience, I found that this time has been kind of amazing to get more private and in some ways to go in deeper with the poets that I love. And so that's just my experience.
yeah, that's great. Timothy, there's a question from Deborah noting that I was quite gutted by the massage parlor poem and wonder if it's part of an ongoing project of response to recent violence.
So I wasn't sure if I was going to read that poem, and Caleb, you kind of inspired me because I love your new poem and all the poems that you read tonight. And I just thought, well, why not? You know, I was afraid that people would think I was being capricious or exploitative, you know, to do a self-portrait as a strip mall masseuse, but I didn't mean it that way. You know, I mean, I actually go to an Asian massage parlor, right? Not to get my dick jerked off, but just to get like a normal massage. And those are workers who are in peril, you know? And so I was thinking about them, even though I'm not in Atlanta. And I was also just selfishly thinking about me, like I could be in a parlor at the wrong place at the wrong time. And so, but I think here's the thing. I think the poem wants to do something different than journalism, you know, different than an op-ed, different than a Facebook post or a social media blast. And so you have to find out what that is for yourself. I think you have to find what is it that a poem can do that exceeds these other forms, because otherwise we just can use the other forms. You know, and I think in a lot of what I heard tonight with everyone reading is I kept hearing answers to that. That's sort of what's happening in the poem addresses all these issues, homelessness, you know, being trans, and the stuff that's going on right now to our planet, you know, but we can't just like write journalism and break it into lines. I'm sorry. Right. So something else has to come in. And bless you, Christy. And maybe some of the other readers can talk about that a little bit tonight, because it seems like all of us are really interested in the trauma of contemporary life right now.
That seems very accurate. Yeah, does anyone want to speak to that?
I mean, the only thing I think about is climate catastrophe. I don't know. It all seems just so finite. And then you pair like my trans body with like the finiteness of the earth, and I really feel like I'm on a schedule and I have to do a lot in a small amount of time. So typically I don't like when people are like, oh, it's so urgent, but like I have an urgency about me. And I would much rather not have urgency, but I didn't have much agency in that. Like, we are moving too quickly and the world is what it is. So I have to be an urgent person. Yeah. And that affects everything I do.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Climate change, climate anxiety, the climate crisis is central to my poetics right now. I've been working on a series for about 3 years that I can't seem to finish, and maybe that speaks to the tension between wanting to hold on to something that feels infinite and unfinished and unfinishable in light of how finite and close to finishing the world seems to be. So it's like, oh, okay, tension.
And we're like very blasé about big news now. And I think that really says a lot about the human psyche. Like, nothing really affects me anymore. And I have to like say to myself, you're not being affected by things that should be affecting you. Go somewhere and be affected. Like, take a minute, you know, and that could be another mass casualty. That could be this pandemic. That could be the, you know, climate catastrophe. It could be anything. But I just, aliens are very real in here. So there's that, which like is just fine, I guess. And we don't really care because we're unaffected by everything. You know, so who are we if you just can't get a rise out of us at all anymore? Like what are we? We gotta, I don't know, take some time and think about the stuff that's going on.
You know, when you say that, it reminds you that, you know, poetry can be an immediate response or a reaction, but it can also be like this slow digestion, right? The thing that we get all this information and it's not sinking in, or it sinks in for a day, and then we're like on to the next thing. And I like thinking about poetry as this kind of huge digestive organ that we can very slowly digest our experiences, you know, and the news and the info until it does sink in. Right. And so I often think of like, there are two different kind of like ways, you know, a really kind of wonderful, improvisational, impulsive, responsive way, but then something that's also very measured and meditative.
That's a luxury that we have, that tool, right? That organ. And I don't feel like a writer all the time. In fact, I don't write all the time, and art takes up a pretty small amount of my day. So I think when things don't affect me, I'm like, oh goodness, I'm disassociated, just like all of my peers and all of my friends. And like, what are we going to do with mass disassociation? So I think, I don't know, there's no point to it other than it's upsetting, you know, like as humanity. Gotta be like, wake up, buds. We can do this.
You know, one of my mentors died just a couple weeks ago, the Polish poet Adam Zagajewski, who taught in Houston. And I remember one of the things he told me is that poetry is great because it's just like a part-time job. Like maybe we're a poet for 2 or 3 hours of the day, and then the rest of the day we're not. And so there's something that you said there that sort of reminded me of that we can then be, you know, most of the time are like non-poet selves doing the things that we need. I mean, Christy and Alexis, how many hours a day are you a poet?
2 tops.
Well,
I was gonna say too, just like to add with what you were saying, Timothy, about like documenting I've been working with like docu-poetics recently, I think because during this time I've been really, you know, paying close attention to not what I'm writing, but like what other people are writing, and like just trying to understand like what's going on in the world by just like toying with what other people are saying more. And I feel like that's been a really amazing way to understand what's going on in the world, and not just like from my own voice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love the multi-voiced. I was like I did have kind of was thinking a little about Ruckhiser and like the speed of darkness when you were reading Alexis. So that makes sense to me. Um I mean, to answer your question about how often am I being a poet or do I feel like a poet? I feel like poetry, the thing I love most about poetry is how it helps cultivate different habits of attention, and bringing those kinds of habits of attention to the world feel really um, continual. Um, and so poetry is kind of the lens that helps me see the world in these kind of just refracted kind of ways. So in that sense, like how often am I occupying poetry as a space? I would say a lot of my day. How often am I writing a poem? That, I mean, that's a different story, but
I think it's really, and the more you talk about that, Christy, poetry is really intrinsically tied for my capacity for empathy. So yes, a lens, but it's like the way I grow into more of an empath. So in that way, I spend a lot of my time doing it, but I'll write a poem like every 4 months, you know, so.
Yeah, it seems like even when poets aren't writing poetry, we're like gestating, you know, the way like when Jack Gilbert says, even when a dancer holds still, the dancer is still dancing, right? So in that sense, I think my mentor is totally wrong, and that we're probably like, in some ways, we're like a poet 24/7, because it's not only our waking perception, but it's our dream life and the unconscious, right? Christy, I see a question in here from Deborah. Is repetition of words, sounds a habit of attention?
yeah. Yeah, I was just answering that in the chat. Yeah, I definitely think so. I've been rereading HD a lot recently, to the trilogy specifically, and thinking about this one kind of part in the trilogy where she's talking about the kind of the constellated reading practices that draw out kind of different worlds that then get to exist simultaneously. And that kind of constellated practice is something poets can help people do. And it creates, I think, systems of expansion where we might otherwise feel deeply constricted, because it helps us see not only an interconnectedness among words, but I think it extends out to a stronger sense of an interconnectedness between seemingly disconnected or disparate things. So I think so. But maybe also I'm a like still have a little too much idealism in me for a 39-year-old. So I don't know.
You know, just to speak to the this expanded quality of poetry that Alexis and Caleb mentioned during the pandemic. So our contest, right, just closed 10 days ago, the Saturnalia contest. And this year we got our record number of submissions. So we received 782 manuscripts, and everyone was just kind of shocked in the avalanche. And so there was this thought, so what is going on? Is it that a lot of people are at home and they're writing, you know, and they've had that time maybe, you know, when they're not exhausted by, you know, virtual things and that. But I mean, can we come up with any ideas, like why would this be the case that so many people have more than ever like manuscripts?
They all had books.
Yeah.
Just needed to, like, you know, like cross the T's and dot the I's. And I think that people drag their feet on the closing moments of like putting a book together. I think it's the hardest part because you have to call it a book. And then you have to start doing the worst part of art, which is the business side. And so, yeah, when I say I don't spend a lot of my time thinking about art, it's because it's monopolized by writing emails, because that gets sucked away, you know, the actual art. And I think I completely understand the hesitation to taking the next step with a book. But if you wipe the calendar free for an entire year, they're gonna put the axe at the back of the book and they're gonna pull the trigger and, you know, send the book along. So I think that's why you're seeing the avalanche. I know people just sitting on like 3 manuscripts. I'm like, what are you doing? Send one somewhere, you know? And that hesitation before making art public or reckoning with the idea of making art public in that way. The slow process, I think.
You know, one of our intrepid Saturnalia interns is here tonight. And I'm wondering, Lisa, are you able to unmute this woman, Jennifer Fiore? She's got kind of like a nice cream colored background. She's in a black t-shirt. She's waving.
I was able to unmute myself. Hello.
Okay. Jen, what's it like to read all these manuscripts?
I'm absolutely loving it. There are so many and they're all great. Like there's no stinkers, and that's the worst part. Like because everything is good. Everything is just if everybody's been sitting on their manuscripts, everybody should start submitting them because they're just beautiful. It's great. It's been great. However, there are a lot. They're there.
Now, Jen, for every manuscript that makes it to you, like 9 get thrown out. Just say it.
I believe it. I mean,
Yeah.
I believe it. But there's just so many winners in there. There's really a lot of great stuff.
And I wish you guys could see Jen's comments. It's like, seriously, it's like a treasure trove for every manuscript. And I'm still thinking, how can we like get these comments to the people who submitted them? But it's all like a little secret thing, isn't it? I mean,
They're all blind. Yeah. There have been a few where I don't know if you've noticed, I've put in the notes, after it's over, please let me know who the poet is, because I would love to actually patronize their work. I would love to go to their readings. I would love to know who they are. But I mean, it might get lost somewhere in the 700 plus comments, but it's beautiful stuff in there. Yeah.
We are coming to the end of our time together. So Caleb, did you want to say something? Did you have?
I asked about the poems that I read tonight because they're not in all the Gay Saints. So my 3rd book is called What Runs Over, and it comes out, I think, on Tuesday. So 3 of the poems are in there, and then 1 was brand new. So I don't know who asked. It's kind of.
I think they had to leave a little while ago, but it's nice to address it anyway. So
We got there eventually.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you all so much. That was just a fantastic reading. I really enjoyed hearing you talk afterwards. I'm totally going to get my t-shirt. Yes. But thank you, really, it was wonderful work. And if anyone has anything else in the chat, you know, throw it in. But I think we're wrapped up. Looking forward to seeing you next year in New Orleans, actually here.
We're there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good night, y'all.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.